No one took you for 410 years. But I will. Come with me. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of preservation fields, a steady vibration that had gone on for centuries. Dust had gathered on the glass sarcophagus, a relic from an age before the collapse. Inside it lay a being that wasn't quite human, and yet, by every measure of ancient record, it had once been one of us. Her face was serene, preserved as though she'd fallen asleep only yesterday. Black hair floated in suspension, eyes closed, her chest still as the system kept her suspended between death and life. A plaque at the base bore an inscription in a language most had forgotten to read. Subject 17, Experimental Colonist. Status, unclaimed. Years elapsed, 410. The archivists had catalogued her long ago. The alien curators from the Vayari Empire had dismissed her. Too primitive, they had said. Too dangerous. Too unstable. Too human. And so she had lain there. For 4 centuries. Captain Elias Moran stood alone before the glass, his hand brushing away the dust. He had come here on a salvage charter, chasing rumors of forgotten tech. He hadn't expected to find her. But when his eyes met her sleeping face, something old stirred inside him, something that belonged to no empire, no fleet, no hierarchy. 410 years, he murmured, reading the plaque. His voice echoed in the cavernous vault. And no one took you. They left you here to rot. He clenched his jaw. Humanity had scattered, broken, sold into servitude under alien rule. The old worlds were ashes, Earth a memory carried only in whispered songs. Yet here she was, a remnant of the time when humanity dared to stride into the void on its own terms. The console flickered under his touch. Systems long dormant awoke, warning prompts blinking in archaic Terran script. Warning, revival procedure requires genetic key. Authorized human descendant required. Elias stared at the message. Then, almost without thinking, he pressed his hand to the scanner. The machine hesitated, lights crawling across the glass. Then, green. Match confirmed. Revival commencing. The hum deepened, resonance filling the vault. The preservation fluid drained, revealing her more clearly. Elias watched. Breath caught, as her chest rose, once, twice, and then she gasped. A ragged breath that broke 4 centuries of silence. Her eyes snapped open. They were human, pure, unfiltered human. She coughed, trembling, eyes darting wildly until they fixed on him. Who? Her voice was raw, broken from disuse. Who are you? Elias swallowed hard. What could he tell her? That humanity had been scattered? That most of her kind had forgotten who they even were? That the galaxy had passed judgment and left her entombed for eternity? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. No one came for you, he said. Not the archivists, not the empires, not even our own. They all turned their backs. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she looked as if she might collapse back into despair. But Elias extended his hand. But I will. Come with me. She stared at him, at the offered hand, at the man who had broken her long solitude, and slowly, hesitantly, she reached back. Their fingers touched. Something ancient and defiant surged in the air between them, a spark that had carried humanity through every extinction and exile. The galaxy had forgotten her, but humans never left their own behind. Elias smiled faintly, helping her step out of the sarcophagus. Let's show them, he said, his voice steady now. What 410 years of waiting looks like when humanity answers. And together, they walked out of the vault, 2 against the stars, carrying a promise the universe had long dismissed. But humanity was back, and this time, they would not be ignored. Would you like me to expand this into a long multi-part story, where the revived human learns the galaxy has changed, and she becomes a symbol for humanity's resurgence, or keep it as a short self-contained HFY tale? Part 2, The Forgotten Star. The vault's doors groaned open, and stale air rushed out into the wide corridor beyond. Elias kept his hand on the woman's arm as she stumbled forward. Her legs were weak, trembling from centuries of stasis, but her grip on his sleeve was iron. The station creaked around them, built by alien archivists. It was never meant to host life, only to preserve relics and prisoners of time. The light was dim, and the metal walls seemed to whisper with the weight of memory. What year? She asked, her voice rasping. Elias hesitated. For centuries since you were sealed away, the empires rose, fell, changed hands. Humanity, we survived, scattered across their chains, but not like before. Her brow furrowed. The project, did we succeed? The colonization fleets, did they? He shook his head. I don't know all the history. Some of us became mercenaries. Some became thralls. Most forgot Earth was ever real. The archivists kept you here as a curiosity. They never revived you because they feared you. Feared me? Her lips curled in bitter disbelief. You're human, Elias said simply, untouched. From before the fall. To them, that makes you dangerous. They walked in silence for a time, the echo of their footsteps the only sound. Finally, she said, my name is Lyra. I was meant to lead a colony fleet, and if everything you've told me is true, her eyes, still regaining their fire, turned to him, then we have work to do. When they reached Elias's ship, the Wayfarer's Oath, Lyra stopped short. The vessel was small, patched together from scavenged hulls, human-built but with scars of alien tech spliced in to keep it running. It was no colony ship, no great ark of her time. And yet, as her eyes ran across its battered frame, she smiled faintly. It's ugly, she said. Yeah, Elias admitted, rubbing the back of his neck, but she flies. She touched the ship's hull reverently, then it's a start. Inside, Elias guided her to the crew quarters and fetched a ration pack. Lyra ate slowly, with quiet intensity, every bite grounding her more in the present. When she finished, she leaned back and looked at him sharply. You didn't wake me just to save me. Why? Elias met her gaze. He could have lied, but something about her, the weight of centuries in her presence, demanded truth. Because humanity needs more than scavengers and survivors, he said. We need a reminder of who we were. Someone who can stand up and say we are not finished. When I saw you in that sarcophagus, I realized they left you. But I couldn't, not when the galaxy's trying to erase us. Silence hung between them. Lyra's hand tightened into a fist on the table. Part 3, The First Fire. Lyra stood before the ship's viewport, her reflection pale against the stars. She wore a borrowed jacket that hung too loose on her frame, but there was nothing fragile in her posture anymore. The days since her awakening had sharpened her, her voice gaining strength, her gaze regaining its weight. Do you feel it? She asked softly. Elias glanced up from the navigation console. Feel what? The wrongness, she said, the silence. For centuries ago, these routes would have been alive with human chatter, explorers, traders, colonies. Now it feels like we're ghosts in someone else's sky. Elias's jaw tightened. That's because we are. The Vayari patrol these sectors. They don't like humans flying without their permission. We're supposed to stay in the enclaves, work their jobs, fight their wars. Lyra turned, her eyes burning. And you obey? I survive, Elias said flatly. Lyra studied him, then shook her head. No, not anymore. If they feared me enough to keep me locked away for 400 years, then we're going to make their fear real. Before Elias could answer, the ship's alarms blared. Contact. The console flashed. Unidentified vessel intercepting. Elias's blood went cold. The Wayfarer's Oath wasn't made for combat. He switched to sensors, and the readout confirmed his dread, a Vayari cutter. Sleek and predatory, dropping out of FTL right across their path. A voice crackled over the comms, sharp and cold. Human vessel, you have been observed leaving restricted preservation zones. Cut engines and prepare for seizure. Resistance will be punished. Elias swore under his breath. They must have tracked us from the archive. Lyra stepped forward, staring at the alien warship filling the viewport. Its dark hull bristled with weapons, glowing with predatory intent. Can we run? She asked. Not from them, Elias admitted. They'll tear us apart before we spool the drive. Lyra's expression hardened. Then we don't run. She turned to him, and for the first time since her revival, Elias saw the leader she must have been, someone born to command fleets, not hide in shadows. Arm me, she said. Elias blinked. We don't have real weapons, just a coil gun for scrap defense, Anne. Then give me the coil gun. Her tone left no room for argument. Elias swallowed, then moved to the weapons station. The Oath's coil gun was primitive compared to alien weapons, a crude rail-mounted launcher more suited for puncturing derelicts than warships. But in Lyra's hands, the system came alive. She scanned the alien cutter, eyes flicking across weak points. The Veari ship loomed larger, locking targeting systems. Human vessel, the comm repeated. Stand down immediately. Lyra leaned forward, her finger hovering over the trigger. She whispered, not to Elias, but to the stars themselves. They thought 400 years would break us. Let's remind them what waiting does to a human. And she fired. The coil gun roared, spitting a slug of metal across the void. It wasn't elegant, wasn't advanced, but it struck true. The Veari cutter shuddered as the slug ripped through its forward sensor array, blinding it. The alien captain's voice turned to furious static. Elias gaped. You just hit their eyes, Lyra said calmly. Now move us. Elias jolted back into action, wrenching the ship into a dive. The cutter's weapons fired wildly, blind shots tearing past as the Oath rolled away. Lyra braced against the console, her face alight with a fierce, almost terrifying joy. Do you see it, Elias? She shouted over the alarms. They bleed like anything else. The cutter swung clumsily, still trying to reorient, but the Oath had already slipped into the debris field of a shattered moon. Elias threaded the ship through rock and ruin, every nerve on fire. When at last the sensors showed the cutter dropping out of pursuit, Elias slumped back, gasping. Lyra stood tall, shoulders squared, her breathing steady. That, she said, was only the first fire. The galaxy will know soon enough. Elias stared at her. In his chest, something long dormant sparked to life, hope, dangerous and bright. And out beyond the wreckage, the stars waited, knowing that after 4 centuries of silence, humanity had spoken again. Do you want the next part to dive into the fallout, the Veari Empire branding Lyra as a terrorist, forcing humans across the galaxy to choose sides, or focus on Lyra gathering a hidden network of scattered humans who are ready to follow her? Part 4, The Name They Remembered. The Wayfarer's Oath drifted in the shadows of the shattered moon, its hull shivering from stress fractures. The crew, if 2 people could be called that, sat in silence. Elias patched the last breach in the ship's systems. His hands shook as he worked, adrenaline still burning through him. The Veari cutter should have destroyed them, yet somehow they had lived. No, not somehow. Because of her. Lyra sat across from him in the dim light, her hair damp with sweat, her gaze far away. She was not trembling, not exhausted. If anything, she seemed sharper, more alive than before. The long sleep had ended, and something older, fiercer, had risen in its place. Finally, Elias broke the silence. You know what happens now, right? Lyra looked at him. Yes, they'll hunt us. Not just us, Elias said grimly. Every enclave, every hidden ship, every human colony. The Veari don't tolerate defiance. You made us visible again. For a long moment, her face softened with guilt. She closed her eyes, breathing slow. 400 years, Elias. They kept me caged because they were afraid of what I represent, and I let that rot in me for too long. But now, I can't hide. Her voice lowered, fierce, and neither can we. Elias frowned. We're not soldiers anymore, Lyra. We're scattered, broken. Then we'll gather, she said simply. The first signal came 2 days later. The comms array lit up with a coded burst, an old human cipher that Elias had never seen used in his lifetime. Static hissed. Then a voice emerged, rough, accented, half-broken from poor equipment. This is Outpost K-73. We heard the news. A cutter lost sensors, by human hands. If it's true, if someone stood against them, tell us. Tell us who. Elias's blood went cold. They already know. Lyra leaned in, pressing the transmit key with steady fingers. Her voice carried no hesitation, no fear. This is Lyra Morgan, commander of the Eden Colonization Project. The Veari caged me for 400 years, but I am free now, and I will not stand alone. Silence followed. Then, one by one, more signals bled into the channel. A mining enclave on Titan's ruins, a mercenary crew hiding in the asteroid belts, families tucked away. Part 5, Sparks in the Dark. The first strike wasn't planned. It couldn't be. The Wayfarer's Oath had docked at a refueling station orbiting the husk of a gas giant, a place where human freighters paid heavy tribute to Veari overseers for the right to breathe and trade. Elias had been cautious, always cautious, but Lyra had walked the station corridors like a storm waiting to break. She saw them, human workers in collars, bent beneath alien whips, traitors with their voices lowered, afraid to even make eye contact. And she snapped. They chained us, she whispered to Elias as they passed another checkpoint. 4 centuries, and we bowed our heads. Not anymore. Before he could stop her, she had marched straight into the overseer's chamber. The Veari guards hissed at her intrusion, their scaled armor clattering as they raised shock staves. Lyra's voice cut through the hall like a blade. Humans, she cried, not to the aliens but to the laborers in the shadows. 400 years ago, we carried fire into the void. They tried to bury us, but we are still here. I am still here. Gasps spread through the crowd. The name had already traveled, whispers of the woman who defied a cutter. Now they saw her with their own eyes. The overseer hissed and barked orders. A guard lunged forward. And Elias shot him. The hall erupted. Humans surged from the corners, fists, tools, and fury in hand. The guards fell beneath a tide of long-suppressed rage. Lyra tore the overseer's banner from the wall and raised it high, then snapped it over her knee. The sound was thunder. The refueling station was theirs. Hours later, Elias sat in the commandeered control room, his hands still shaking. He hadn't meant to start a war, but the war had found him anyway. Lyra stood beside the viewport, her eyes reflecting the glow of the liberated station. You realize what we've done, he said hoarsely. The Veari will descend on us with fleets. They'll burn this place to cinders. Lyra didn't flinch. Then let them come. We'll be gone before they arrive, but the fire will spread. She turned to him, fierce and unyielding. Elias, this wasn't just about fuel or survival. Every human who saw what happened today will carry it to the next world. They'll remember that we are not slaves, that we are not forgotten. Her hand brushed the console, and she spoke more quietly. I can feel it. We've lit something they can't put out. And she was right. In the days that followed, signals flooded the comms. Enclaves that had hidden for generations now declared themselves free. Mining crews struck back at their overseers. Merchant ships refused to pay tribute. It was uncoordinated, chaotic, but it was happening. The Veari called it terrorism. The humans called it something else. The awakening. In the dark hours between jumps, Elias found Lyra in the cargo bay, staring at the stars through the thin viewports. She didn't notice him at first. Her shoulders trembled, not with fear, but with the weight she carried. You lit the match, Elias said quietly. Lyra's hands curled into fists. And matches burn out. If we don't turn sparks into flame, they'll crush us harder than ever. Elias stepped closer. Then don't carry it alone. She looked at him, really looked, as though seeing him for the first time beyond a soldier, beyond a relic finder. Slowly, she exhaled. For centuries I lay in silence, she whispered, and when I woke, the first hand I saw was yours. For a moment, just a heartbeat, the fire in her eyes softened. Then the alarm blared. Another signal, another human enclave, another plea for help. And Lyra straightened, her voice hard again. Plot the course, Elias. It's time they learned we are still human. Would you like the next part to show the Veari's brutal counterattack, to raise the stakes, or the first meeting of human enclaves rallying under Lyra, showing her rise as a true leader? Part 6, The Hammer Falls. The Veari didn't wait long. 3 weeks after the station uprising, word reached the Wayfarer's Oath like a knife in the dark. The Empire had answered. A mining colony on the edge of the Red Veil Nebula, one of the first to declare loyalty to Lyra, was gone. Not conquered, not reclaimed, gone, glassed from orbit until nothing but slag floated in its place. Elias stared at the holofeed in silence, the scorched ruins turning slowly in the projection. He'd seen death before. He'd fought skirmishes, watched ships break apart. But this was different. This was deliberate. Lyra stood behind him, hands clasped behind her back, her face carved from stone. The light of the projection flickered across her eyes, but she didn't look away. They didn't even take prisoners, Elias whispered. They want fear, Lyra said. They want silence. They think if they strike hard enough, the fire will die. Her voice was steady, but Elias heard the tremor buried beneath it. She blamed herself, he could see it in the tightness of her jaw. They'll keep doing this, he said. Every enclave that raises its head will be crushed. How can we fight fleets with scavenged ships and coil guns? Lyra turned sharply, her gaze locking onto his. We don't fight their way. We don't match them ship for ship, gun for gun. We make them bleed in ways their fleets can't answer. Guerrilla strikes, hidden networks, fire that spreads faster than they can stamp it out. Her hand slammed onto the console, the projection flickering with the force. They'll expect us to break. Instead, we'll become unkillable. The chance came sooner than either expected. A convoy of Vayari supply freighters, lightly guarded, moving through an unpatrolled corridor near the Tarsus Rift. Normally, such a target was suicide for humans. Getting close to the Empire's lifelines meant certain death. But now, Elias piloted the Wayfarer's oath through the rift's magnetic storms, sweat dripping from his brow as the ship shook violently. Lyra stood beside him, gripping the railing, eyes locked on the scanner feed. There, she said, 3 freighters, 2 escorts, cut through the lead and the rest will scatter. Elias swore under his breath. One hit from those escorts and we're space dust. Lyra smiled, sharp. Dangerous. Then don't let them hit us. The ambush was brutal and fast. The Oath's coil gun screamed, tearing through the nearest escort before it could even turn. The magnetic storms cloaked their approach, scattering enemy sensors. When the freighters realized what was happening, it was already too late. Elias punched the engines, darting between plasma fire while Lyra directed volleys with surgical precision. One freighter erupted in a chain of explosions, its cargo scattering into the void. Part 7, The Council of Shadows. The meeting took place in a hollowed-out asteroid, deep in the belt where no sane empire patrolled. It was cold, unlit except for jury-rigged lamps. The air stank of oil, sweat, and rusting metal. And yet, for the first time in centuries, human leaders from across the scattered enclaves gathered together. Elias had never seen so many of his own kind in one place. Old mercenary captains in patchwork armor, miners still blackened with dust, smugglers, raiders, and even a few gray-haired scholars who had kept Earth's memory alive in whispers. They all turned when Lyra entered. The chamber stilled. She didn't wear a crown, didn't stride with ceremony. She wore the same battered jacket Elias had given her on the day she woke. But there was something in her presence that none could look away from. Lyra spoke without raising her voice. You know who I am. A murmur rippled through the room. Yes, they knew. The woman who defied a cutter. The one the Vayari cursed by name. The relic who had woken to lead. They told you humanity was broken, she continued. That we were too scattered, too weak to rise again. They wanted us to believe it, to make it true. She let the silence hang before driving on, her words striking like blows. But I see miners who've kept the fires burning with their bare hands, traitors who smuggled hope between the stars, fighters who bled for families they'll never see again, survivors, every one of you, 400 years, and still we endure. Her eyes swept the chamber. Now I ask you, will we only endure, or will we live again? The air vibrated with restrained fury. Voices rose, first cautious, then thunderous. Live again. Live. Live. The chant shook the chamber walls. Elias felt it in his bones. When it quieted, a miner with scarred hands stepped forward. His voice trembled with awe and fear. If we follow you, they will come with fleets, with fire we cannot match. What then? Lyra's answer was steel. Then we fight not as they do, but as humans do. We strike where they are blind. We take back what they think is theirs. We make them bleed until they cannot ignore us. She raised her hand, fist closed. The Vayari gave us one name for their fear, Lyra Morgan. But this isn't about me, it's about us, about humanity. Let them remember all our names before this war is done. That night, alliances were forged, enclaves pledged ships, supplies, even their children to the cause. It was messy, fragile, fueled more by anger than strategy, but it was a beginning. Elias sat apart, watching Lyra move from group to group. She was already a commander, binding broken people into something greater. But he saw the weight dragging at her shoulders when no one else was looking. When she finally collapsed onto the bench beside him, he handed her a flask. She drank deep, eyes closing for a moment's rest. "They'll follow you to hell," Elias said quietly. Lyra opened her eyes and stared into the dark of the asteroid sky. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then I have to make sure it's worth it." Far above, in the glittering halls of the Vayari Senate, reports came in, human enclaves uniting, supply lines raided, defiance spreading like wildfire. The High Speaker listened, her scaled hands clenching. "Extinguish this before it spreads, burn their leaders, burn their homes, and above all, bring me Lyra Morgan's head." The order rippled across the stars. But the humans were no longer hiding. They were waiting. Would you like the next chapter to dive straight into humanity's first coordinated strike, the enclaves testing their strength against a real Vayari fleet, or slow down and show Lyra and Elias's personal bond growing stronger as the burden of leadership deepens? Part 8, The First Fleet. The Wayfarer's Oath had never seen so many ships around her. Elias stood at the cockpit glass, staring at the swarm that filled the asteroid belt, rusted freighters with welded guns, mining haulers armored in scavenged plating, even a few stolen Vayari patrol craft painted over with human colors. They were ugly, loud, falling apart at the seams. And they were the first human fleet in 4 centuries. Lyra stood in the center of the command deck, every captain's hollow image flickering around her. Old men with scarred faces, women with hard eyes, even teenagers who had stolen their parents' ships. They looked at her as though waiting for permission to breathe. Lyra drew herself up. "Today, we show the galaxy what it means when humans stand together." Her gaze swept across the fleet commanders. "We don't fight for territory. We don't fight for empire. We fight to remind them that we are still here." The captains pounded fists to their chests, voices rising. "Still here. Still here." The target was a Vayari fuel depot orbiting a dead world, fortified, but not heavily guarded. It was a lifeline for fleets patrolling 3 sectors, a place the Empire believed no human would dare strike. They were wrong. The fleet moved in ragged formation, engines screaming, hulls rattling. Elias weaved the oath between broken asteroids, sweat dripping down his spine. On the open channel, Lyra's voice carried steady and clear. "Remember, hit fast, hit hard, then vanish. Today isn't about winning, it's about being seen." The Vayari depot loomed ahead, a fortress of steel bristling with towers. Alarm klaxons wailed as the first human shots lit the void. The battle was chaos. Mining lasers cut through patrol craft like paper. Cargo ships rammed into escorts, venting atmosphere in desperate collisions. The Oath's coil gun spat slug after slug, hammering shield towers until they burst in showers of flame. Elias cursed as enemy fire rocked the ship, sparks flying from the console. "We can't take much more of this." Lyra gripped the railing, eyes alight with fire. "One more volley. Take out their fuel tanks, make it burn." He obeyed. The Oath's final shot slammed into the depot's core. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world erupted. The depot tore itself apart, shockwaves rolling through the belt as fire blossomed brighter than the sun. Vayari ships scattered, their formation broken, their comms filled with panic. And through it all, Lyra's voice rose over every channel. "This is humanity. Remember us." Hours later, the fleet limped back into hiding. Ships were damaged, crews lost, but the depot was ash. Across human channels, cheers and grief mingled into one voice. Elias slumped in his chair, exhausted, but when he looked at Lyra, he saw her standing tall, shoulders squared despite the weight pressing on her. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it," she corrected. Part 9, The Purge Fleets. The warning came from 3 sectors away, encrypted bursts carried by desperate smugglers and half-broken relays. Elias read the transmission twice before he spoke it aloud. 3 fleets, he whispered, not patrol wings, not cutters, fleets. Lyra's jaw tightened, her reflection sharp in the viewport's glass. "How many ships?" Elias exhaled slowly. "Reports say over 100 warships, carriers, siege vessels, enough to scour every rock in this belt." The command chamber of the hidden asteroid base fell into silence. Around the hollow table, the Enclave captains shifted uncomfortably. Some muttered curses, others looked away, fear plain in their eyes. One captain slammed his fist against the table. We can't face that. Our fleet barely survived the depot strike. If the Veyari send their hammer, we scatter. That's the only way we live. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council. Elias expected Lyra to argue. Instead, she stood silent, staring at the holographic display of the approaching fleets. Her face was unreadable. Finally, she spoke. You're right, we can't meet them head-on. If we stand in a line and trade fire, we'll die. The chamber shifted, surprised by her bluntness. Then Lyra leaned forward, her voice gaining fire. But we are human. We don't fight as they do. We fight in shadows, in dust, in fire. We fight with every scrap they overlook. We make the void itself our weapon. She tapped the display. The hollow shifted, asteroid belts, gas clouds, gravitational traps, places where the fleets would have to pass. We scatter. Yes, she continued, but not to run. We scatter to strike. Every rock becomes a blade. Every shadow hides a coil gun. Every abandoned freighter becomes a mine. Her eyes swept across the council. They expect fear. Give them teeth instead. They expect a clean purge. Give them a war of ghosts. When the council adjourned, Elias found her alone in the docking bay, staring at the hull of the Wayfarer's Oath. You sounded sure, he said quietly. I wasn't, Lyra admitted. Her shoulders sagged. Just for him, Elias, 100 ships. I'm asking miners and smugglers to stand against war machines built to crush empires. He stepped closer. You gave them hope. That's more dangerous than any fleet. Lyra's eyes flicked to his, softening for a heartbeat. Then the fire returned. Hope won't stop plasma fire. No, Elias said, but it might teach us to survive it. 2 weeks later, the purge fleets arrived. Hundreds of Veyari warships tore into the belt, their formation a storm of steel and fire. Entire asteroids shattered under their opening barrage. Their commanders broadcast one message on every channel. This rebellion ends here. But the humans were waiting. From the shadows of the belt, scavenged ships pounced, firing slugs into fuel lines. Miners detonated charges that sent asteroids spinning into carrier hulls. Freighters, seemingly abandoned, exploded with stolen munitions, ripping through escorts in blinding flashes. Everywhere the Veyari turned, ghosts struck and vanished. On the Wayfarer's Oath, Elias dodged plasma fire while Lyra directed the fleet, her voice calm amid the storm. Strike at their supply ships, cut their lifeline. Don't hold ground, make them chase shadows. Remember, the longer we live, the more they bleed. For the first time in generations, the Veyari's great fleets faltered. They were not fighting a rebellion to be stamped out. They were fighting humanity, reborn in fire. The battle would not end quickly. Weeks of cat and mouse would follow. Systems burning, lives lost. But the purge fleets had come expecting to erase ghosts. Instead, they found themselves haunted. And across the stars, whispers spread like wildfire. Humanity fights back. Humanity lives. Do you want the next chapter to dive deeper into the guerrilla war against the purge fleets, showing human cunning and sacrifices, or shift to the Veyari Senate's panic, revealing why they fear humans so much that they tried to bury them for 410 years? Part 10, The War of Ghosts. The Veyari fleets advanced through the asteroid belt like a forest fire, slow, relentless, burning everything in their path. Entire colonies went silent, their people fleeing into tunnels or scattering into the void. But everywhere the fleets turned, the humans struck. A freight hauler, drifting powerless, suddenly came alive, its cargo bay packed with salvaged warheads. It tore a battleship in half before the Veyari even realized it wasn't derelict. A mining station, abandoned on sensors, detonated its fusion core just as a cruiser latched on to strip it. The shockwave shattered half a squadron. Even Elias and the Wayfarer's Oath played their part. Hidden in the shadows of a tumbling asteroid, they drifted silent until Lyra gave the word. Then Elias burned the engines, slingshotting the ship out from cover as their coil gun tore through an enemy destroyer's thrusters. Before the larger ships could react, they were gone again, vanishing into the belt's chaos. Every human ship was a knife in the dark. The Veari were disciplined, methodical, but they were built for wars of empire, not wars of ghosts. A captured transmission revealed their frustration. They will not stand and fight. They are vermin. Every world we burn, more slip through our grasp. Every ship we kill, 3 more emerge from shadow. This is not war, it is rot, spreading. For humans, it was survival made art. They had learned it in exile, hiding from patrols, scavenging from wrecks, scraping life out of forgotten systems. Now that desperation had teeth, Lyra knew the cost. Though each strike came with names she had to record, entire crews sacrificed themselves so others could escape. Whole families chose to ignite their stations rather than let the Veari take them alive. Still, the whispers grew louder. Across outlaw channels, in smuggler dens and forgotten ports, one message spread. Humanity is not finished. Humanity fights. In the hidden council chamber, battered captains gathered once more. Holomaps showed scattered Veari fleets stalled in their purge, bogged down by traps and ambushes. They underestimated us, one grizzled captain said. His voice was hoarse, but proud. They thought they were hunting prey. They've woken wolves. Another captain leaned forward. If they bleed enough, maybe others will join us. The Zai merchants, the Koran mercenaries, none of them love the empire. They only fear it. Lyra's gaze sharpened. Then let them see, not only that we live, but that the Veari can lose. Later, in the quiet of the oath, Elias found her in the observation deck, staring at the distant stars. You carry it heavy, he said softly. Part 11, The Buried Truth. The Veari Senate convened in silence. The chamber was vast, carved from translucent crystal, its walls resonating with the voices of 100 species delegates. Yet now, no one dared raise their voice. At the center, projected for all to see, was a map of the Purge campaign. Everywhere it should have shown progress, burned colonies, erased fleets, it showed disruption, red fractures across the supply lines, dead systems marked with Veari losses. Humanity, after 4 centuries of silence, was bleeding the empire. High Chancellor Sarek tapped a claw against the council dais. His voice was cold, clipped. 410 years, 4 centuries of monitoring, of culling, of ensuring their kind never again rose from the ashes. Yet now, here they are. An elder senator hissed from the shadows of her pod. We should have finished the extermination when we had the chance. A younger one countered. The accord forbade total erasure. We promised the assembly that humanity was broken, docile, scattered. We lied, Sarek thundered, slamming his fist. The chamber trembled. Elias would never hear these words. Lyra would never see the faces of the Senate as the truth uncoiled. But the aliens remembered. They remembered what humanity had been before the fall. A predator species that had leapt to the stars faster than anyone expected. A people who turned every environment into a weapon, who made allies of storms and enemies of empires. The Veari had fought them once, long ago, and though they had won, burning Earth, scattering the survivors, they had paid in oceans of blood, entire fleets lost, worlds stripped bare. It had taken 4 empires together to bring humanity down. And even then, they hadn't been certain it would last. That was why they buried the truth. Why every archive of human war was locked. Why every surviving colony was monitored, kept small, kept desperate. Because the Senate knew the truth no one dared speak aloud. Humanity did not die. Humanity waited. And now, the waiting was over. Then what do you propose? One senator demanded. If the purge fleets fail, if the rot spreads, what is left to us? High Chancellor Sarek's eyes burned like fire. We remind them why they feared us. We do what we should have done 4 centuries ago. The chamber fell to whispers. Even the air itself seemed to recoil. Extermination, Sarek said at last, his voice like a blade. No more hiding. No more colonies in shadow. Humanity ends here. Back aboard the Wayfarer's Oath, Lyra stood before the holomap of their next ambush. She did not know the Senate's decision, only the tremor running through the void, the sense of something vast shifting against them. We've made them bleed, she told the captains. Now they'll come for us with everything, and that's when we show them, we are not prey. Elias looked at her, realizing what she already knew. The war was no longer about raids, or survival, or even being remembered. The war was about whether humanity would rise again, or vanish forever. Do you want the next chapter to follow humanity's bloodiest ambush yet, a turning point battle? Or to show Lyra discovering fragments of Earth's buried history, the reason the Veari fear humans so deeply? Part 12, The Ambush at Kether's Maw. The Wayfarer's Oath coasted in silence along the fractured edge of an asteroid field called Kether's Maw. The place was infamous, a graveyard of broken moons and frozen debris, sharp as knives, orbiting a dying star. Few ships dared to enter, it swallowed fleets whole, which made it the perfect hunting ground. Lyra stood over the holomap, her face lit by ghostly blue. A dozen ships of the human flotilla floated, hidden in the shadows of stone. Cargo haulers turned into gun platforms, mining rigs with their drills retooled as railguns, refugee ships armed with whatever scrap could fire. Every one of them had chosen to stay. "They'll send a supply fleet through here," Lyra said, her voice carrying in the cramped war room. "Grain ships, fuel tankers, escorts, but not too heavy. If we break them here, the purge fleets starve in the outer belt." Silence. Then a grizzled captain leaned forward. "And if we're wrong?" Lyra didn't flinch. "Then we die making them afraid." Hours later, Elias watched from the gunnery station as the void rippled, Veari ships dropping from FTL. Not a dozen, not 20. 50. An entire convoy, fat with supply barges, and shielded by destroyers, cruisers, and a dreadnought whose armor shimmered with void-hardened plating. "Saints preserve us," Elias whispered, his hands tightened on the controls. Lyra's voice crackled through the calm, steady and sharp. "All ships, hold position. Let them think it's safe." The Veari moved cautiously, their escorts scanning the Maw's shattered rocks. The convoy stretched like a spine of fire through the dark. Then, at the perfect moment, Lyra spoke one word. "Now." The asteroid field ignited. Hidden human ships powered up all at once, coil guns firing molten tungsten slugs, mines tethered to drifting rock burst in blossoms of plasma. Entire asteroids, rigged with thrusters, slammed into Veari hulls like titanic spears. The dreadnought roared, shields blazing under the sudden assault. Its escorts scattered, trying to form a screen, but the convoy was already chaos. Elias fired the Oath's main coil gun, the slug ripping through a destroyer's bridge. Another shot crippled a fuel barge, sending it spinning into a cruiser's flank, both ships exploding in a brilliant chain reaction. The comms filled with human voices, shouts, curses, laughter. "We got one. Heat pressure, heat pressure. Station 3 is gone." But they took 2 escorts with them. For every human ship torn apart, 2 Veari followed. It was working. Against impossible odds, it was working. But then the dreadnought turned. Its main cannon charged, a sun growing in its heart. One shot, and an entire human wing vanished in light. Lyra gritted her teeth. "We can't break it head-on." Elias's hands moved before he thought. He rerouted power, overloading the Oath's engines. The ship bucked under the strain. "Lyra, I can take us close. Too close for that cannon." She spun toward him, eyes wide. "That'll kill us." Elias gave a crooked grin. "Then let's make it count." The Oath dove through wreckage, weaving between shattered hulls, skimming the dreadnought's shields. Turrets spat fire all around them. But Elias flew like a man possessed, threading through gaps a fighter wouldn't dare. "Target its spine," Lyra ordered, voice low, deadly, right where the shield nodes overlap.